It's like 3:30 in the morning. I've decided to do a few vlogs on stuff I know a lot about or have had experience with, and this one is going to be about a couple of stories. Camera. I should probably line out the camera first, you know. This one is going to be about claiming your self-value, claiming what you're worth, and I'm going to tell you two stories from I'm going to try to keep it around 15 minutes and tell you two stories from my life and two guys and I felt like having a cup of tea, about two guys that sort of changed my life with some pretty simple stuff. Cool guys, you know, and these vlogs, I'm not the people who kind of follow my daily grind, if you will. I like, it's always funny when a white guy drops into rap speak, you know, but things that had a big impact in my life and things that I think we all probably sometimes have trouble with. You know, that's kind of the problem with being a human being is, you know, some days I'm able to set limits and boundaries and claim what I'm worth, and other days things come at different times when you're not ready for them. That's why they have printed rules sometimes on walls, or, you know, I used to have on my studio wall, so I don't have to constantly reiterate that in person. People can see, you know, when I was in my right mind, the rules that I laid down for the operation of the studio. So the two stories, two guys. The first one was a teacher when I was a student at Trebas Institute of Recording Arts, and his name was Jim Mandel. And I told this story in another vlog, but not very well, a few years ago too. But I was a student at Trebas Institute Recording Arts, and the first day, Jim Mandel, he owns a place called Interlock Studios in Los Angeles, and huge Schwarzenegger movies, you name it, it's done there. He started out with a 4-track cassette recorder, which he kind of has in a little museum at the studio now, and I haven't seen Jim in many years. I don't know if it's all still there or what's going on, but probably, knowing him. But you know, he saw this market of, there are people who will pay you to record them, and even though it sounds unlikely and impossible, he took this 4-track machine and built it into a multi-million-dollar empire that, you know, has, at his studio, they do the highest level of audio for video post-production and recording, you name it, they do it, and well. But when Jim walked into the room to teach the course on studio management, and he wrote a book called Studio Management Handbook, Jim Mandel. It's insightful and well written, handy book. I don't know if it's on the market anymore. I lived it for a long time, but he walked in the room and he something embarrassing happened right away in front of, like, you know, a bunch of us students. You know, he tipped over his coffee accidentally, and then, you know, his books were knocked off. He accidentally knocked his books off the desk and hung his jacket up, and it fell down. And you know, it's like I could, as all that happened, it was, and everybody was kind of chuckling and laughing, you know. And as all that happened, it was kind of cool because when he put his jacket on the stand, you know, for coat stand or whatever, and it fell off to the ground, he just looked at it and he went, gravity storm. And at that moment I could tell, you know, we were kind of laughing at him, and at that moment I could tell, you know, the way he handled that was that this man had had a tremendous amount of high-level experience dealing with people professionally and effectively. And he just, his jackets, his coffee spilled, his books were all scattered, and then he went to hang his jacket up and it slipped. He just goes like, gravity storm. And then he immediately addressed the class and said, okay, let's get down to business. I'll take care of all that later. And really a very personable guy, nice, great guy. And, but from that little bit of info, I was able to pick up, like, this guy is good at he's good at communicating. He knows what he does. So, later in the course, Jim, I got to know him a little bit, and personally a little, and he would stay after and talk to me, and in his book he sort of has the history of this 4-track cassette machine, in that era, $1,000 unit, nowadays $100 unit. They don't even make them. Piece of junk, really. But how he turned that into a multi-million-dollar empire that works at the highest level in Hollywood. And a very personable guy, and so finally he knew I had at that time an 8-track half-inch machine, a Mackie mixing board, and an SM57 in a small room, basically a glorified shed at that time in like 1989, something like that, in Hollywood, right in the middle of Hollywood. And I wasn't doing anything professionally with it, and so one day after class, when it was about 3/4 of the way through the semester, we were talking a little bit after class, and I'd given him a few demo tapes and so on of my own material, and he said, look, and I had some crappy security job at the time, and was going to college and working 2 or 3 jobs really. And he said, look, here's the deal. I've looked at your situation, what you have, the gear you have, and what I want you to do is take out an ad in the local paper. It was called The Recycler then. Eventually I was on the cover of The Recycler in a strange twist of fate some years later, but he said, what I want you to do is I want you to take out an ad in the local paper and advertise your services as a professional, a studio, And, it's kind of like where your head's at the time. And I was like, oh my God, I just come to Hollywood a couple years before, and I wasn't quite used to all this stuff and the whole layout. And oh my gosh, this is big stuff, And that's kind of rule number one for me, is like things that kind of seem like huge and big. Not usually. I could give you lists of things I've done, and people, their jaws would drop a lot, and some, unless you have a resume handy, might or might not believe it, some of the things I've been a part of. But when you're in the thick of it, it's just like, it's, you can't really see things as these big, huge things. So anyway, he said, it was a huge deal to me. He said, open, advertise your services, and make some money. Take in at least one client and make some money at the studio business. And his thing in philosophy was, look, he knew the exact number. He said, there are 2,793 people that come to Los Angeles every day that get off the bus. And they can't sing, a lot of them. They can't play. They really have no talent at all, but they will pay you to record them. And it's your job to do the best job you can recording them. What comes out of it, that's their problem, It's their job to make it, it's your job to make it sound good, record it the best that you can do. But the technical side, the artistic side, them. So I was really nervous about it. I was like, I cannot do this. Oh my God. And then he further added, if you don't do this, I can't pass you in this course. So, like no pressure, right? But I did take out an ad. And, from the time the first client came in, I was broke, working several jobs, and I was charging $10 an hour, if you can believe that, you know, in Los Angeles for, recording. That's, giving it away, even with the gear I had. My final room rate was $250 an hour, and I had 8 rooms going. So, and that's cheap still. But I did, and that money meant a lot to me, and I reinvested that in blank tapes and built my own sort of empire. But the idea, what he was saying was, look, value what you do. You're used to it. You don't really understand the value of it, but other people will, and if you don't value yourself, no one will. And I'd had a situation where I was kind of recording people not for money, and sometimes a little, maybe. Before that, let me see, how did I get involved with Chris? Anyway, the story was, I learned a lot about, setting your self-worth there, and that's kind of in life in general. If I don't tell you, or you don't tell people, how much you're worth, then nobody else will, and a lot of times that's hard, because a lot of self-esteem issues and things are tied up with that, so it's tough stuff, so it always helps to have some support in those areas, and people saying, yes, you should charge, you're valuable. I was going to say, with one kid I had coming in, before I really turned pro and just said, this is the room rate per hour, I had a kid come in, and I think I was just charging like whatever you feel like it's worth, whatever you want to pay, some stupid idea like that, And so he stayed all weekend, and I could have been messing with my girlfriend, relaxing. I actually had some very rare time off. And at the end, he said, here, man, I'm going to give you, like it was some big present. I was thinking like $500 would be nice, a good price. He said, I'm going to give you my smoking jacket that I really love and value. I just think that it was a piece of shit. It was like a $30 smoking jacket, but a big deal. It wasn't $500 in cash. And, I got pissed at the kid, and I threw him out of the studio, actually, and took the jacket. He didn't have any money, it turned out. And it was really tense and uncomfortable for both of us. And it just so happened the woman I was with at the time is a well-known self-help book author and 12-step person, and I'd met her in one of those programs. And so we were both totally into recovery and all of that. People are trying to get themselves, living right. And she said to me, and this is very true, she said, look, I know you're angry about this, and it's a bummer, because you were going to make some good money, supposed to. The week before, the kid had paid, like for the same amount of time, $500. But what she said was, it's your fault, and it's not fair to the kid, that comes in, to the client that comes in, to not be clear as a bell up front about what's expected of them. And this will go probably 21 minutes exactly. I haven't practiced or anything, but I'm like almost 15 in. Anyway, that that seems so foreign to me. Like, it's my fault, and it was, for not being clear with him and about how much he was expected to pay. And so neither one of us were clear on anything, and it was just this big bullshit situation of like ridiculousness. That was the last one I ever did on like, pay me whatever you feel like is right in your heart kind of thing, because most people feel like nothing is right, or you should pay them for the privilege, and people don't value things if you don't charge them for them. It's just a bummer of life. In my manufacturing business, some of the bands would give out free CDs at the whiskey or whenever, whatever concerts they did. And if you gave them out free, you would find those CDs. Excuse me, where did they go? I noticed if the bands, I would rarely go to a gig, but when I did, they would ask, and I also was an A&R representative, so someone would ask me, well, as well as running a mastering lab and a recording studio in Hollywood. So I had a lot of stuff going on. They would ask me to come. I would. The bands who gave away the CDs, you would find them crushed on the floor afterwards. You know, people treated it like trash. It was giveaway. They didn't value it. And what research showed, and I found out in just personal experience, is that if they charged $10 a pop, you would see people carrying those to their car, like protecting it, you know. So they valued the whole thing. If you don't value what you do, nobody else will, you know. That's story number one. So on valuing, on really setting your own self-worth. And if you don't, nobody will set your self-worth, you know, at any level that's right for you, you know, and probably not to your advantage at all. That's just the way the world works, you know. The second story is about a guy named John Van Est. And John, in that era, it was really cool. He was kind of the last of the little ponytail guys. They even made fun of these type of guys. I was a little ponytail guy in the early 90s, you know, like slickly dressed and little ponytail in Hollywood. It was kind of a producer thing for a while. And it's totally dated, whatever, now. But so John was one of those guys, but he had taste and style. He was very well styled, and it was obvious this is a successful guy. I met him through my ad in the paper I'd taken up with my CD and DVD manufacturing or mastering business. I had also started a manufacturing business. And John owns a place called Image Recorders in Los Angeles, still does. And Image, he does a lot of people, big time people, you know, and I was still getting started. I think my biggest credit at that time was I had done some post-production and editing and mastering of the theme song of The Gambler 5. You know, what an epic movie that is. I'm still good friends with Kenny's bass player, Chuck. And, you know, I mean, things grow, but, you know, that was my big claim to fame at that time. It was like 91 or so, I don't know. It was early, you know. And I think that was the first one. Anyway, so here John, he works with like Madonna and Aerosmith and all of these people. He contacted me to do some manufacturing for his own album project. Somebody, not his own music, but somebody he was handling on his label. He wanted me to manufacture 10,000 copies or something. So he ended up coming personally into my studio, and we're talking about, you know, at that time, a guy in a very humble surroundings who was just starting to get going in Los Angeles, and later my thing would become, you know, successful and so on and bigger. But John came in and he liked the place right away, and it was really, I mean, when I saw his place, you're talking multi-million-dollar thing, and I'm like in some crummy little shed basically, you know. But he liked the idea. He said, man, you've really got a very accessible thing going on. He found positive things to say. But while, this is a really important thing that happened, while he was there, I think it was people from Aerosmith were showed up at his studio unannounced and started unloading truckloads of gear to just come on in and start recording on their own time, just whenever they felt like it, kind of a thing. So he, at the time, had a speakerphone. And he was at my studio, and he got a call, and the call went like, it was from one of these assistants that he had, and he always paid his assistants. He didn't take advantage of people. He had 6 or 8, you know, usually young, attractive women working for him, always paid them. He knew that that also brought in clients, and people enjoyed that kind of thing. So a legit smart man, you know. And a call came in, and it was, he, like I said, it was impressive. He had a cell phone at the, you know, oh my gosh, I was so impressed. He wasn't trying to impress, is what was cool about him. And so he said, it was the secretary, she said, the guys from Aerosmith are here, and she was all impressed and knew with his company, and they're unpacking all their stuff and moving into studios A, B, C, and D. And John went, no, 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 Terry, hello, listen to me, Terry. We tell them when to come, when to go, and how much they're going to pay. That's what we do, honey. He goes, don't feel bad. You let them in. And he wasn't patronizing. I don't think he called her honey, something like that, but a term of endearment. But anyway, the point is that he said, we tell them when to come, when to go, and how much they're going to pay. And that one conversation, and this was, Aerosmith was moving into a studio. He was basically saying, look, respect me and value what I do, and I don't care who you are. You're gonna respect me and play by my rules, or don't bother to come in. And he had done a lot of good work with these guys, so they wanted to come in. So that was the conversation. I love the way he delivered. He goes, no, we tell them when to come, when to go, and how much they're going to pay. And that's what we do, okay? Now tell them to pack up and leave. Well, about 30 minutes later, another phone call came in, and it was the guy who managed, I think it was Aerosmith, or Madonna. I think it was Aerosmith. And it was somebody on that level. I was just listening to all this, going, oh my God, you can't tell Aerosmith to leave. You couldn't tell Madonna to leave, Both have been at his place, And the second call came in. It was the guy who managed Aerosmith. I think it was them. And he said, I apologize. I'm so sorry, John. We didn't really think. They were kind of trying to play that we're famous, fuck you kind of card. Looks like we'll do what we want. And he said, it's okay. Just don't let it happen again. And that told me, here this guy had rock stars apologizing to him and begging to come in, and that told me this, and making tons of money, and that told me this is a great business. But beyond that, it told me value yourself, value what you do, and other people will value it too. That's the only way they ever will. And in this world, with what I'm doing now, I'm not making any money yet, but I will, and I'm convinced I will. The numbers say I will, and within 2 years. And, it's the kind of thing where that's the way we keep score, like what I'm doing now. So not about money. Unfortunately, that's the way you garner respect, is to ask people to pay something for, to honor what you do. So, those two experiences, Jim Mandel and John Van Est, from guys who were already established, really helped me get somewhere in establishing my own self-value and my own self sort of asking for what I was truly worth. And I thought I'd just relate those stories. I'm like 22 minutes in now, 23 minutes in. But, those are hard things. Those are hard topics. A lot of us have had, abuse and in our youth and addiction and people putting us down our whole lives. And so sometimes it's really hard to rise up and say, this is how you will treat me, or don't treat me at all, kind of a thing. This is what and I'll respect you, respect me, kind of a thing. And it, it's a give and take deal. So, yeah, I thought I'd put that out there, because there were just such epic moments in my life that to this day both still change my whole life. Putting yourself out there with the first studio, taking a risk and asking for what you're worth, and the second one really just stating what you're worth, and really what this is about, claiming what you're worth and owning it. And when you do art, it's hard to claim, your own, what you're worth. So, these, I don't care if anybody watches. I mean, somebody eventually will, I think, and take some value out of it. This is free, by the way. I should make it subscription for anybody, whoever. If you take value out of it, pay me. But just some of my experience. Your mileage may vary, but claiming what you're worth is really tough. It really is tough, and it's tied up with self-esteem. Let's see. I do endings on my vlogs. Poltergeist. Let's see. People, this self-worth is claimed.